Welcome. I am Sylvia, and we're here with Jennifer from Ascension EAP. And today we're going to talk about enjoying the holidays during a pandemic. So, one thing we need to consider while enjoying our holidays this season is that we can still celebrate. Holidays are meant to be a time of joy, tradition, and togetherness. However, this holiday season may be a bit different. Traditions and activities that have been a staple for generations are being changed and remade. Comfort levels and togetherness may vary amongst family, and the pandemic has certainly put many of us in a financial strain. This season will help you prepare for the holiday season ahead. You will feel more confident in saying no to people, places, and things that no longer work for you and your family, and say yes to the things that are most important. Some of the objectives to consider is going to be considering how you might manage your holiday gatherings. Discover ways to set boundaries and limits. Discuss strategies for constructive conflict. Consider your holiday budget and ways to stick to it. Acknowledge and cope with grief. And discuss ways to enhance your self care. All right, holiday gatherings to be or not to be. So, the reality is that people have very different opinions and comfort levels when it comes to holiday seasons, and especially now during COVID and trying to come through the pandemic. The keys to enjoying this holiday season are going to be compassion, patience, understanding, flexibility, and acceptance. So, non judgmental communication. Here are some of those things we listed in the last slide. Acceptance. Avoid judgment and criticism, respect and accept differences. Everybody's going to have their own opinion on something. And if we all come together and have a certain level of acceptance for others, we'll get through it a lot easier. We also want to have a certain level of genuineness. So, teaching yourself how to be kind and a compassionate person inside and out is going to be so important. And then, of course, empathy. You might not agree with the decisions that others are making, but if you can at least step aside and kind of look and understand why they might be making the choices that they do, it'll go a long ways towards having kind of a non judgment in the holiday gathering area. Communication tips. So, one thing to make certain is when you are communicating with others, whether it's responding to an invite or whether you're inviting others and having to kind of specify what you want to take place, don't respond right away, right? Invite a conversation with questions and phrases like, tell me why this is important to you. Tell me more about that. Help me understand why you feel the way that you do. Fully understanding another person's point of view before offering your own is super important. So that might be you repeating back to them, I hear you saying this. My understanding is that you mean this. Is that correct? That way, when you respond, you're responding to what that person is actually trying to communicate to you and not just what you thought they were trying to say. And then, most importantly, if things get heated, take a break, right? Timeouts are not just for children. Adults sometimes need timeouts too, so that we don't say or do something we would regret. So think it through. Anticipate situations and be prepared with a response in advance. So you know the holiday seasons are coming up. You know that you may get some invites. So prepare in advance of what you might say, how you might respond, and how you feel about that. What scenario below would be most uncomfortable for you? Consider how you would respond with acceptance, genuineness, and empathy. So, your relative insists on gathering for the holidays the way that your family always has. Or maybe your family member decided they're not going to gather during the holidays the way they always have. How does that make you feel? You have agreed to gather for the holidays, but maybe your relative insists that everyone wear a mask and you really don't want to. How does that make you feel and how might you respond to that? Have some self reflection. What if your family's comfort level, think about what is your family's comfort level right now? Are you nervous? Are you cautious? Do you feel fully comfortable with everything? Based on your comfort level, what are you comfortable doing during the holidays? So if you're feeling somewhat cautious, is there something that you might change? Might you go to some of the get-togethers, but not all of them? Is there anyone in your family that you might put at risk if you do gather? Do you have an immunocompromised child at home? Do you have an in-law that is elderly and has some health concerns. How might you address that? What are guidelines would you like to implement to keep yourself and others safe? Do you make the decision to go these, but you're going to mask up? Do you make a decision not to have anybody at your house who isn't wearing a mask? You make those decisions for yourself. What phrases could you say in order to decline invitations? What can you tell yourself to stay strong through the holiday gathering so that you don't give in? For an example, my decision to gather is mine to make. Let's discuss boundaries and limits. So here's an assertiveness tip. When setting boundaries, it's normal to get pushed back, especially if this is something new for you. Be kind, but be firm. Be clear, specific, and firm. So, what sounds more convincing to you? Just think about these things. If someone says, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet, or if someone said, we will not be coming to grandma's this year, what's more convincing, right? The one that is firm, specific. We're not coming this year. Or I don't think I'll have time to make the pies, or I won't have time to make pies, but the bakery has a great selection. Yes, I won't have time to bake the pies. That one is more firm, it's specific, it's clear, it's sending a very specific message. When you add in words like I don't think or I'm not sure, it leaves it open for somebody to try to change your mind, right? It's inviting them to try to push back. All right. Another assertive tip. Use I statements to avoid people becoming defensive. I feel blank when you blank, or I need blank. So here's an example of that. A correct way of using an statement. I feel unimportant when you insist on doing things I'm not comfortable with. I need you to hear my perspective and respect my position. That is clear. It's a perfect use of an I statement. An incorrect version would be, I think you're a jerk, right? If someone said to you, I think you're a jerk, you're going to get defensive. You're going to get, you're going to kind of push back. You're probably going to say something back to them that's going to be equally unkind. That's not the communication we want to have. Use a broken record technique. So a couple slides ago, we talked about coming up with clear, precise statements that you will use and keep on using when somebody is inviting you or trying to push back, right? When you've set those boundaries. Some of these might be, we're not coming, or I'm sorry that you're angry. I'm angry too. I know you think our reasons aren't good enough, but I'm not going to change my mind. You see, there's a lot of I's there. It sounds like you're hurt. Please know it's not personal. We love you very much, but we need to do what's best for us. Or I know this might be on Hilda's last Christmas, but we've made our decision, right? Clear and firm. Notice that this message, the same message is being repeated in all of those, right? The message of, nope, we've made our decision and we can't be persuaded differently. How about some self-reflection time? So some questions to ask. Ask yourself questions to talk it over with your partner. What holiday activities or traditions are you really excited for this year? So thinking about the holiday season and trying to make a decision on what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. What are the ones that are super important? What things do you not want to be pressured to do this year? What phrases can you use to decline an invitation or an obligation? What are some other ways of phrasing your regrets? Prepare for that broken record technique that we saw in the last two slides. What can you tell yourself to stay strong in the holiday season so that your boundaries remain intact and that your intentions are what you want them to be? My decision to gather is mine to make. So that decision, that example of I'm in charge of my own self and my family, and we're going to make a decision that's best for us, and then we're going to follow through with it. All right. Next area is constructive conflict. So when there are decisions to be made such as this, that it's bound to have people with opposite opinions on things. There's going to be some conflict, right? How do we get through conflict during the holidays? One area of conflict is, of course, discussions that are heated. So anything that's controversy, anything that people might have a different opinion on. So conversations about media, politics, maybe just people criticizing someone's cooking or commenting about someone's weight or poor time management, parenting, cleanliness. You get it, the same stuff that happens every year. You get together with people, someone always remarks on something, right? Which of these topics for yourself now make your blood boil? Think about that. Which ones do you not wanna have? And then set a rule. Maybe consider leaving political discussions on the other side of that door when we gather. Maybe we're not gonna talk about those sensitive topics, and we're gonna be here and just spend time together and enjoy one another's company. Kind of goes a long ways to lowering the stress level. The next step is respond wisely. So if for some reason these conversations come up, it gets the blood boiling, how can you control yourself? You start by controlling your physiological reactions. We do this to counter our fight or flight symptoms. So that's breathe, nice rhythmic breathing, relax your muscles, relax your shoulders, and smile, right? Now I'd like for you to take some time. Think about the most offensive person you can imagine. Think about those most offensive, criticisms, topics of conversation. Imagine them at their worst. What are they saying? What are they doing? Imagine them talking about politics or religion or whatever that hot button, blood boiling topic is for you. They're just harping on it right now. They just won't stop. What is your stress level 0 to 10? 0 being not stressed at all, and 10 being very stressed. Think about that. Where's your stress level? Now, with that in mind, we want to take a few minutes to watch this video and follow along with the instructions on the screen.
Thank you, Sylvia. As Sylvia mentioned, there are a lot of things that are coming up in this holiday season that are going to be stressful for us. I think one of the biggest pieces is first recognizing that that is going to happen, being aware of it, and having some preparation for it. But hopefully, you participated in the breathing exercise and were able to see how quickly you were able to use your breath to bring your reactions down, and that we have that ability to manage our own levels of stressful reactions all the time. So I would ask you to think about, what does your stress level feel like now compared to prior to doing the breathing exercise? Hopefully you were able to move down at least a couple numbers. And the more that you practice this, the easier and more powerful it can be for you. In this second half, we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to really manage some of that stress and how we can help ourselves with a good plan through the holidays. So, remembering that you get to control your response. Try to think ahead about those hot buttons. And then when things come up, try to not take them personally. Just let them roll off. Often other people are also feeling very stressed about the holidays and sensitive. And usually that's what they're responding to more than to you. Also, let go of any temptations that you might have about trying to set other people straight on their own reactions to the holidays or their ideas about politics or any of those other things. It's not your job to do. And honestly, it's probably not going to be effective. And so just letting those things go. So if other people choose to go down that path, let them go. Don't go with them. One of the other things to think about is that often at our holiday gatherings, alcohol is a factor. And for most of us, alcohol causes us to relax, but it also reduces our inhibitions, which means that things that are on the top of our head are more likely to come out of our mouth, good, bad, and otherwise. So we need to recognize that about ourselves, that we might not have that control. We might not be able to avoid some of those heated situations if we are drinking. Also, that other people, when they're engaging in alcohol use, might also say or do things that maybe they didn't think out so much. So again, going back to recognize that, maybe that isn't really coming out the way they meant it to, and this is not the time or place that we're going to go through any of these discussions or disagreements that we have. So some of these sound a little bit silly, but trying to remember that, you don't have to respond to other people's jabs at you. You don't have to respond to their ignorance or to their behaviors. You can think of yourself, as being completely, protected from anyone else having control over your emotions or your reactions. So sometimes we can use some humor and be like, not my problem, not the hill I'm going to die on today, just going to let it go. And also we can use some of that breath and meditation and even some prayer sometimes to be like, okay, help me through this. Find a way that works for you. Going back to some of that self-reflection, again, knowing yourself about when these things come up, you are in control. Do not give anyone else the remote control on your emotions or your reactions. You have that control. So remember that you're responsible for how you react. You're responsible for your own words. You're own body. So being able to do some of those breathing exercises to calm yourself down, or physically removing yourself from that situation or that conversation or that location for a while, if that's something that you need to do. And on the other hand, letting go of the things that you can't control and not trying to fix them. So, holiday budget. Sylvia let me have the really fun topic. Nobody wants to talk about money pretty much any time of the year because it's stressful. It's a necessary evil, but it often causes a lot of tension in families and in couples, and just adds a whole nother difficulty, particularly if money is already tight. And now we come around to the holidays where there's more expectations for food and parties and gift giving. And certainly that's something we want to participate in, but it's just not always financially reasonable for us. And so how do we manage that? A few things is to recognize that you're probably not going to fix all your budget things just in time for the holidays. So probably having a whole year plan and budget would be a better strategy. So maybe for next year, even planning ahead, how can I do this differently? Trying to get yourself organized and coming up with a budget. But I think it's important even in the holidays to come up with, this is the amount that I feel comfortable spending for this holiday season, and then sticking to that budget. When I was talking about the bigger, longer term plan, we all want to talk about paying off debt and having more savings and being able to plan for the future. So keeping those things in mind, that the holidays are very important, but they're very temporary. And honestly, by the time we get to January, a lot of times people have forgotten about those things, and even forgotten about if gifts were given or they weren't, or how much money was spent on them. So keeping those things in perspective, that you don't want to jeopardize your longer term goals for savings and for the future just in this one holiday time. Some of that means that you have to have some good self-discipline. You need to be careful with just this once I'm going to do this. You need to try to let some of that guilt go, that your number, that amount that you spend on gifts on any one person or party or whatever, is not reflective of how much you love them or how much they're important in your life or anything else. It's a budget that you need to stick to. You might also consider other incentive programs like holiday clubs that you might have through your own bank or credit union, where you can be planning all year for the holiday, and then you stay within that budget, and that's all you have to spend. Another piece that we have to acknowledge during the holidays that makes it more difficult sometimes is that it's also a time of grieving. So when we talk about grief, we often think of having lost a loved one, and then who is not present at the holiday table, who is not present in our holiday celebrations, which can be really difficult. But also to realize that grief is about any sort of loss. So it can also be loss of not being able to get together this holiday because of financial reasons, because of distance, because of someone's illness, because there's other things going on. There can be losses because maybe you have a member of the military in your family who is currently serving. Maybe there has been a divorce where people are choosing to not be participating in the family gatherings. There could also be some personal choices about, as we mentioned before, masking and vaxxing and personal comfort, that it is sad that we're not all together, but being able to accept that. So again, just going into that, knowing that there are lots of different ways that we might feel some sadness or even like an emptiness around the holidays, and that's completely normal. It's important that we identify what we're feeling about that, going through and recognizing, like, I'm just mad. I'm mad that we can't celebrate holidays like we have. I'm mad that this pandemic has still going on and is still interfering in my life. Or recognizing that, I know it's been several years, but I still miss my dad every year. And it's hard for me at the holidays. And I realize everybody else has moved on, but I'm still having a hard time with it. And being okay to talk about that with someone that you trust, or maybe even sharing that at family events, that, I'm here and I'm glad to be here, but I'm struggling today. And that's okay. And also, figuring out those things that, again, is there something that you need to pull back and have time to yourself? Is there a different way that you need to honor the loss or manage the grief that you're feeling? And maybe it isn't engaging in the holiday celebration this year, or it's briefly, I'm going to go for a couple hours and then I'm going to go, so that you feel like you've honored yourself and your own need for space, but you're also participating with the family. Acknowledging that sometimes just holidays in general feel overwhelming with all the busyness and the financial that we talked about, the stressors that are happening at work and in our personal life, pandemic or otherwise, and that it's easy to get overwhelmed. And so being okay to slow things down, limit your activities to the things that are really, really important to you and the priorities that need your attention, and maybe letting some of those other things go. This is a good time for us to remind you that as a benefit of your employment, the Employee Assistance Program offers short-term counseling for you and every member of your household. And often holidays are a time where it might be nice to talk to a completely unbiased person and just vent a little bit about some of the stressors, or to come up with some of the strategies that we talked about earlier in the presentation. Like, how am I going to handle this? I know it's coming. I don't really know what I can do. Also, it's good to remember what isn't changing and what are the priorities again. That the most important things, like connecting with your loved ones, can still happen even if you can't physically be together. How can you still connect with those people that you love? How can you still have some of the traditions that are really important to you, whether those be religious holidays or traditions of activities or decorations or things that you do that can still happen? It's important to write down things that we're thankful for, to counter a bit some of the things that we're frustrated about or that we feel a loss, that there are still a lot of things that we can celebrate and be grateful for. All year, it's important to have self-care. I would say that at the holiday time, it's even more important that we acknowledge that there is only so much we can do. We need to be gentle with ourselves and with others at this time, and that includes taking care of ourselves. So looking at our wellness all the way around. If you have not been participating in eating very healthfully or drinking water or getting out for a walk, if you have been disconnected from some of your spiritual practices to meditate or pray or to have some private quiet time, if you have been disconnected or having difficulty in relationships, might be time to address one of those areas. Even one area, if you can, for example, try to get a little more sleep, try to drink a little more water, try to drink a little less alcohol, that can affect all of the other pieces of the wellness wheel. So, we recognize that we're not going to change everything on day one, but maybe getting back into our yoga practice, for example, or remembering to take that walk on our lunch break can really make a difference. So thank you for joining us for this holiday presentation. I hope that you have learned some good tips that you can use now in this stressful time, but really all through the year. Just to remind you that you get to have the reaction to how you're going to respond. And the best way that you can do that is to plan ahead, have some boundaries and observe them, honor yourself and what feels comfortable. Get ready for some of those tense situations with some strategies on how you can exit or let them roll off your back. Think about a budget and how you can manage that so you're not adding another stressor onto yourself. Acknowledge that this is difficult for everybody, and it particularly can bring up those feelings of sadness and emptiness for lost loved ones or lost traditions or other griefs that you might have at this time of the year. And that self-care is always important, but it is not selfish. It is a really, really important piece, and especially during the holidays, to focus on what are those primary things that I need to do to just take care of myself, because if I don't, all of these other things are just going to be that much harder. And reminder once again that your EAP program is here. It is a benefit. It is free to you and often underutilized. So please, if we can be of support to you or your family, reach out to us at our 800 number, or you can email us, or you can go on our website. Thank you, and I hope that you have a good holiday.